What I realized was that I wasn't shrinking in the effort because I was throwing everything at it. I was actually shrinking in my authenticity because I'd built a life that looked impressive. I didn't necessarily feel aligned, and letting go of that authenticity was terrifying.
Hi, and welcome to Don't Shrink to Fit podcast. This podcast is all about you and all the courageous, driven women like you. We are here to inspire, to empower, to share, and to embrace one another. We will be talking with women from different backgrounds and careers about love, family, friendship, their wins and falls, and what it took for them to live the life they love. I am your host, Claudia Noriega-Bernstein, and I am so happy you're here today. Hi, everyone. Today we have a very juicy episode. I have Nicola Marie Rose, often known as Nikki. She's the founder of Hash Away, a sound-based emotional regulation initiative designed to support children, especially neurodivergent children, and the families and professionals who love and care for them. She created Hash Away in response to something many of us have witnessed, like children being managed, corrected, or fixed, instead of being supported to feel safe and understood. This conversation is about nervous system, safety, consent, choice, and what comes possible when we shift from behavior control to emotional support. So Nikki, welcome. We are so happy to have you here.
Claudia, absolutely honored. I love your work. I've been listening to your podcasts and I love them. So thank you for having me.
Of course. So I wanted to start by asking you, why did you start in this field?
So I grew up in Northern Ireland. I grew up on a farm, and I guess looking back, emotional regulation existed before I even knew kind of what the language was. And I went through, my parents divorced when I was really young, and it was a bit of a struggle. And I had to survive. I had two older brothers, and I kind of lived this life of not realizing that I was probably dysregulated a lot of the time, but I had to survive. I had to get through the situation that we were in. I left Northern Ireland when I was 24, and I came to London. It was the big bright lights, and if I'm honest, this is called Don't Shrink to Fit, and I think it's absolutely perfect because I felt like I was always shrinking to fit in and to meet the mold and to do what everybody thought I had to do and to make my parents kind of proud. And I left a really good job in the corporate world to set up a children's nursery because I absolutely love children and I wanted to be surrounded by them. And that period of my life was probably my most difficult, but also my strongest part of my journey. It was the ups and the downs were so fluctuating that I came out of that whole process a completely different person. And so after having a childhood of always trying to make my parents proud, success became really intertwined with self-worth. And when I set up the nursery, I began to struggle. I was overwhelmed. I had 25 years in business. And when you work in the corporate world, you think you know all about business until you actually set up your own business. It's completely different. And identity lapsing in the strangest way. And having the nursery stripped everything back from me because I couldn't hide behind the achievement that I was trying to kind of constantly work towards. And what I realized was that I wasn't shrinking in the effort because I was throwing everything at it. I was actually shrinking in my authenticity because I'd built a life that looked impressive. I didn't necessarily feel aligned, and letting go of that authenticity was terrifying, but it allowed me to, the nursery was, if I look back on 55, and if I look back on those kind of 7 years, they were so pivotal in terms of where I am today. So letting go of that identity was absolutely terrifying because it allowed me to redefine my success as integrity, as nervous system safety, and truth rather than applause. And so Hush Away, what I do now, was born in that, I guess, recalibration. It wasn't a strategy, it was a response to slow down and listen to myself. I'd spent years mistaking that adrenaline, that strive to achieve. I worked to get onto the board of directors. I was 40 years old. I was the youngest person. I did all of these huge things, huge achievements. But coming through the nursery and the experience made me really take a step back and look at my life. And I spent years of mistaking that adrenaline for what I thought was purpose. And at the end of my nursery years, I lost my mum. I can't even put that in words.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. But, dealing with that grief. And so I honestly believe that I became an adult through moving away from the nursery and losing my mum. And they say that when you lose your second parent, when you've lost both your parents, you lose your childhood. And I swear it's true, because as soon as I lost my mum, I felt completely on my own. Nobody's coming to save you. Nobody's coming to pick up the pieces. And I really do believe I became an adult, as soon as my mum passed. And so grief, especially missing my mum, really softened me. And I gradually moved into holistic therapies. I discovered sound, and kind of in parallel with that, I was doing some voiceover work. I was doing audiobooks and e-learning videos and podcast jingles. And I then stumbled upon sound and sound healing and sound therapy and thought, wow, I can talk about that in a moment, but just how magical that is, and it's so individual. And it was around last year. Hushaway has been in development since August 2014. And it's funny, the way it started was I'd sold the nursery in 2019, just before the pandemic. There is a God, honestly, because it was just what a phenomenal.
Perfect timing.
I felt it in my stomach, Claudia. I felt it this, and I remember phoning my mum and saying, I feel like I've got to sell. And mum was behind me all the way. But I really miss the children. I guess, if I'm honest, I really feel that I have arrived where I'm supposed to be in life, because I've brought my experience of helping children develop with my voiceover work together, my love of sound healing and sound therapy, and I've brought it all together. And like, how lucky am I honestly feel really grateful that I'm in this situation where I can bring all this together and continue to learn, continue to explore. I went on a sound healing and sound therapy weekend in Portugal, in Cascais, at the weekend. Level 1, and I do level 2 this weekend coming, so I'm back to Portugal again.
Beautiful.
And that's phenomenal, because that's taking sound. What we do at Hushaway is all about frequencies, solfeggio frequencies, binaural beats, ASM, and it's just taking that to the next level, where it then goes a bit deeper about, it's not even just about the history of sound, but how you can use so many different tools to help children regulate their emotions, which is what we're here. That's what we're here to do, is to help children. So does that answer your question in a very long-winded way?
Of course, and I love that you explained this so beautifully, because in a way, life puts you through this university of knowledge to come to where you are right now. If you would never had that nursery, you wouldn't be able to identify the need of those children. You would have just be, well, I had my own experience when I was a kid. I felt this, and that, and I had depression and blah, blah, blah. But that was it. Now you are a witness. Now you can look at a child and say, wait a minute, this is not a behavior problem. This is maybe a safety or maybe a regulation issue. And how can I approach this in a way that is not invasive or threatening for the child, so the child can feel relaxed and at the same time take something with him?
Yeah. And you know what's interesting, Claudia, is my indicator of success is so different now compared to the briefcase, the suit, the boardroom, because
Right.
I believe now, if I can help children feel safe in their nervous systems, if I can build something that is ambitious and aligned, then that feels like success to me, to help
But
children.
that was your calling. And I think that all these years that you were in the corporate world give you evidence to your brain that you are capable. And that is what we need sometimes to go to a venture like the one you went with,
Yes.
Hashaway. You know, if you would have just been a 20-year-old and come to your parents and say, I want to have this business about sound for children, they would go like, is that a hobby? Why
Yeah.
don't you go and learn to
Well,
play an instrument? But because you went through this journey of success, what it is success for half of the world, you created evidence for your brain that you are a capable person, that you're smart enough to know what's right and what's wrong. And now you're making the choice, not because you're not capable to be successful in that area or the corporate world, but because you're choosing something that fulfills you more. And I think that's beautiful. And yes, you're blessed because not everybody has that opportunity.
Yes, I know. I feel so grateful. So when Hushaway started, friends kept saying to me, "Oh, you should do some nice meditations. You do stories and stuff like that." And I thought, well, I could, but everybody's doing that. There's Calm, Headspace. There's some brilliant brands out there that do great stories, etc. So I need to do something that's different and it's actually going to have an impact. And when I look back at my day in the nursery, and I could see the increase of children who are coming in with neurodivergent challenges. So whether it was ADD, ADHD, sensory processing disorder, autism, and we're talking years ago. I can't believe I'm even saying 10. It seems to have flown, but we're talking 10 years ago. And so Hushaway is for children aged between 4 to 10, and it's for those children who are not neurodivergent, who have struggled with anxiety, struggle with sleep. There's about 40% of the children in the UK struggle with sleep.
Mm.
And then you look at that through a neurodiversity or neurodivergent lens. And the children who have got autism, ADHD are struggling not only with sleep and anxiety, but they're struggling with relationships with their friends. They're struggling to
Right.
focus, concentrate in school. But emotional regulation is the biggest thing. And sound-based emotional regulation is an emerging approach. And what we do with Hushaway is we use carefully designed auditory experiences. So using my voice, using rhythm, using specific sound patterns to help children regulate their nervous system. And we're all about the science. We're all about the evidence and the research. And behind Hushaway actually sits 14 people who are researchers, doctors, scientists, SEN teachers, head of SEN school, behavioural therapists, people who sit behind the scenes, and I'm constantly checking, does this feel right? Does this sound right? And they kind of keep me grounded. But in line with that, we've got, you're familiar with ASMR, we've got ASMR researcher and scientist, and they provide all of the evidence and the research that sits behind all the work that we do. The research still needs to be done. There's still a lot of work being done, particularly around ASMR and around solfeggio frequency. So Hushaway isn't claiming to be a medical tool. It's not claiming to be a well-being tool. But we know through research that sound healing and sound therapy is particularly great for children who are neurodivergent.
So that's so incredible that you actually are narrowing this to that, because I think the concept is very wide, lack
Yes,
of another
yes,
word.
yes.
And everybody goes under the same umbrella. And usually when you see a child that is not behaving or is not regulated, immediately go to the parents. Where is the mom? How come this kid is not controlled? How come this kid is not tame? And this is gonna sound funny, but my youngest daughter is 28 years old and she's gonna be 29 in April. When she was a kid, she would throw tantrums, and we would go in a grocery store, and suddenly she wanted, let's say, a box of cereal, and I would say, Sophia, no, you're not gonna have this cereal because this one has too much sugar. We're gonna get this one instead. And she would throw herself in the floor and throw a fit. And I was never the parent who would try to hush my kid. I was never, stop it, people are looking at you, whatever. I would stand there and watch her like, okay, when you're done, you're done. And then suddenly all this passion and energy will go down. She will come down and she will see it and cry. And I will go down and I said, are you okay? Come here, give me a hug. And I didn't know anything about regulating children, but I grew up being hushed, being told to be quiet, and the good girl doesn't make noise and doesn't throw fits. So I didn't want to pass that on to my kids. So when they were like that, and actually the other two never did that. Sophia was the one who was always challenging me, which was the youngest one. When she would do something like that, I would allow her to throw that fit. And now that I am an adult, and because of my show, I had the opportunity to talk with a lot of experts. There is a very distinctive difference between a child that doesn't behave and a child that doesn't feel safe. And we don't understand. We don't even go to the safe part.
Absolutely right. I was exactly this. I think we're the same kind of generation, so exactly the same. In early childhood, emotional regulation is not an extra skill. Like, we're not taught this at school. And
Mm-hmm.
yet, it is the foundation upon which learning, behavior, focus, concentration, and attention in school, and connection, relationships. And when a child struggles to settle or to focus, or transitions are huge. Even that's from home to school, from lunchtime back into afternoon class, and then from school
Mm-hmm.
back to home. They're huge. But when children struggle with those transitions or struggle to engage with their friends, as you said, that's a great example. We describe what we see as behaviour, and yet beneath that behaviour is something that is more fundamental. It's a nervous system that's trying to
Mm-hmm.
find safety, exactly as you said. In today's environment, if you think of the world that our children are living in compared to, I think, in my childhood, all our learning was on the farm. I was driving tractors and jumping off bales of hay. I didn't have the noise that the children have, and this kind of
Mm-hmm.
increased sensory input, faster paced routines. And there's less opportunity for them to slow down. And we talk about this, there's a growing awareness of neurodivergent children, including autism, ADHD, sensory processing differences, which can really heighten the sensitivity to sound, to light, and to unpredictability. And emotional regulation, therefore, it isn't about teaching children how to manage their feelings. It's
Mm-hmm.
about supporting their physiological systems that enable them to feel calm, to feel
Yeah.
alert, but more importantly, to get them ready. That kind of readiness to learn is really important. So before we talk about behavior is the last domino, it's the last one to
Yes.
fall. Before behavior is even visible, the nervous system has already shifted the state, and emotional regulation builds there. So everything that we do, all of the sounds that we use, the story, we even use somatic language in the story. Everything that we do is to help children feel safe and to help them regulate their emotions, to calm down, and to find inner peace. Ultimately, that's what we're trying to do, to find their own inner peace.
That's beautiful. Tell me how the music, though, helps a child co-regulate.
So we have a combination of bedtime stories, daytime stories, and what we call positive affirmation. So it's like meditations, but we don't use the word meditation because we work with a lot of Christian schools and they don't like the
Uh-huh.
word, and to totally agree. So we just say affirmations. Layered behind these stories and affirmations, we have a number of different sounds. We've got frequencies. So these are soft, flowing sounds that strengthen emotions and just kind of help children tune into their inner world as such. So they
Mm-hmm.
are, if you know anything about frequencies, solfeggio frequencies are recorded from kind of 2, 4, 6 hertz all the way up to 963, I think is the top one. And at each level, these hertz support a different challenge. So we work through the five. We've got beta, alpha, theta, delta, and gamma. So, for example, beta is how children feel when they're feeling quite energized. And then we move through to alpha, theta to get them ready for bed. And delta is when they get into like a really nice, they get ready for sleep, basically. We use all of the relevant frequencies in order to target a particular need. And that's the frequencies. We then have binaural beats, and these are really soothing sound waves for deep relaxation, for sweet dreams. And it's a soft, calming blend of frequencies and just lovely magical sounds. Binaural beats them. So do you understand about frequencies and how
Yeah.
they work? So binaural beats is just encouraging the brain to listen to different areas, and particularly for children with ADHD, it really helps them focus and concentrate. It's the sounds in the background that help the children regulate, and then they are ready to listen to the words they're hearing, the gentle storytelling, the lovely somatic language, and the lovely positive affirmations. And then we use ASMR. ASMR is fascinating. So it stands for Autonomous Sensory Meridian Response, and it's the
Mhm.
trigger we get in the back of our
Back of
mind.
your head. Mhm.
Yes. And some ASMR can be seen as quite erotic. We don't go down that area at all. It's very much about personal attention. What we do, our sounds are ASMR inspired. So we use the most beautiful soundscapes to bring a story to life. So for example, we have a story about the whispering pines and the owl song. And it's so a child will open up with a story, and a child will then hear somebody walking along crunchy pines. They'll hear a gate opening. They'll hear the owl tweeting
Mm.
in the background. They'll then hear footsteps on the grass, and then they might hear bees buzzing or crickets. So the soundscapes are used to bring the story to life, and the combination of those with the lovely gentle storytelling is what really helps a child focus. If you think about sound, nature's around us all the time. And so we use the lovely nature sounds to create this lovely calming ambience for the children. But one, we've ended up with over 400 things for children to listen to. We have 55 sound sonics. There are little children ambassadors around the world who test all the products. And they, ADHD, ADD, autism. We've got children in Thailand, South Africa, Canada, Texas, Florida, and UK. And we had one child who is autistic, and he was given a couple of stories to listen to. And he said, what I love about neurodivergent children is that they're so honest, and I love working with
I
them.
know.
And this little boy said, well, what if I don't want to listen to your voice? And I said, that's absolutely plausible. So how about we give you a number of different things to listen to? He said, okay, so we now have, and particularly autistic children want to make their own choices. And this
Mhm.
ties into the somatic language. So we let them choose what they want to listen to. So when a child chooses a story, it might be The Enchanted Forest and the Starbird, they can then choose whatever way they want to, either just my voice, just ASMR, just frequencies, just binaural beats, or my voice and the sound. So they can choose whatever way they want to listen to it. So it's fabulous, and it works. And I think you can't argue with the children. We've got over 80, probably 85 testimonials now of all of the children as they've listened to the stories and the affirmations and the sounds, reporting back on their feedback. And I just think you can't argue with children. So we, albeit there needs to be more research out there, we now have our own research that we're using,
Mhm.
and testimonials. You can't beat good testimonials.
Something that I love that you're saying, when they listen to these stories, they open their mind, their imagination is at full force because, like, at least with me, if I have my eyes closed, all my other senses are like so alert. But if they're
Mm.
telling me a story and I'm hearing the owl or the bird or the water or the steps, then you're imagining also. And that calms you down as well because your attention is not in what is bothering you, but is into the story. And I think
Mhm.
that's beautiful. And it's so brilliant to combine it with the other tools that they can use to co-regulate themselves. One thing I wanted to ask you, because I think is very important for the parents that are listening, how the parents are part of this, because every family is a little tribe and they are all part of this village, right? Of all these other children that are going through the same things, but every family is a little tribe. So how do you enroll the parents into also using the sound and also learning more? So it's not just like when you take your kid to ballet classes and drop the kid at the ballet class and then you come back and pick it up. This is something that you have to bring home with you, right?
Mhm. So sound in itself is so powerful for regulation. We've talked about how it helps the nervous system and emotional regulation. And we also are big believers in co-regulation. Um, and if you think back, like across cultures, lullabies were used to soothe infants and young children. And there's been
Mm-hmm.
research into that kind of parent-infant synchrony. I think it was Feldman, 2007, who highlights how rhythm, tone, and timing between a parent or a caregiver and child really shapes their emotional development. Prosody, the rhythm, tone, and the pace of speech carries so much emotional meaning beyond words. And a parent's calm voice can actually lower um, physiological arousal. And I think this is
Mm-hmm.
due to how vocal tone communicate really safety cues for children.
Right.
So, and there are lots of practitioners who've observed that when adults consciously soften their tone and slow their speech during moments when a child is dysregulated, children begin to settle more readily. And so it doesn't eliminate distress as such, but it does reduce escalation. And so we are big believers of co-regulation. And my dream is that parents are sitting listening with joint headphones to hush away together, because there's a lot of safety in proximity with your parent. When I look back to my childhood, my father was never around. He was out on the farm. My mum was mum and dad to us. And I look back and I look back and try and think of, like, when was I really happy? And when I was really happy was when I was just beside my mum. Just having her near me was enough, just spending time with her. So we know that proximity is beautiful. But we also have, within Hushaway, we've also got some really lovely tools and techniques for parents themselves. Because I heard a parent say, I just wish I could push the pause button. And so we've got a whole group of downloads and PDFs for parents. How do they push the pause button? Because they can't pour from an empty cup. We know that. And children feed off their parents. So it's really important that kind of parents look after themselves in order to be able to look after the children. So does that answer your question, Claudia?
Yes. And when they come to you, do they come already diagnosed, or you run a different diagnosis to see if they are a good fit for your program?
So no, the answer is no. The waiting list in the UK is huge. I don't know what it's like in America, but anywhere between kind of 4 and 7 years. So Hushaway steps in to support at home. It's to support children who are either in the system but still curious, not know what's going on. Parents knowing that something's happening, don't know what it is, but they're just reaching out for various bits of support. And ultimately, before they make that choice, do I put my child on medication? I don't know. Well, here's an opportunity to try this at home in a really safe place and kind of see. So Hushaway, it's a membership platform. We offer, there's a number of free stories and affirmations that parents can listen to before they make that choice. But what's interesting is actually we have quite a few testimonials from parents who love some of the stories as well. So that's fabulous, isn't it? That's amazing. But ultimately, the dream is that children are listening to it with their parents and feeling that sense of safety with them.
So what's the goal for you in like 5 years from now?
I guess my big goal is that Hushaway is the place where children come to when they feel I'm not heard, nobody's listened to me, I feel really anxious, or I don't feel included, or I just need a little bit of support or comfort, soothing. I want Hushaway to be the place that they come to. But also, one of the big things that we're doing, part of our strategy, is to drive awareness of neurodivergent, not as labels, but as, you know what, it's okay to have ADHD. It's okay to, well, actually, it's cool. And being part of Hushaway, it's cool. And I guess it's that, with all the marketing and the positioning that we're doing, is to create this lovely cool brand that kids think, I'm part of Hushaway, I'm accepted, it's really cool. And we have lots of merchandise as well that children can buy into, so if they want to wear, some of the products.
So you want to create a sense of belonging.
Absolute sense of belonging, so they feel that they've got a place to come to when the world gets too noisy, or when they feel the world isn't accepting them. Well, we accept them. So I guess it's that feeling of safety, really.
Yeah. And how that works internationally for you?
It works. Look, sound is universal, right? And that's the reason why I'm constantly looking for children in different countries, because what I want to get across is it doesn't matter where you are, it doesn't matter what culture, what language you speak. Sound is healing and therapeutic for everybody, adults, children alike. So that's the most beautiful thing, that it is universal.
Right. And do you have it in different languages, or right now just in English?
Just in English, but somebody else asked me that as well. So I think that is certainly something that we would move towards. Absolutely. What a lovely idea.
Yeah, I think it would be so important, because especially there is a lot of children in South America or Central America that perhaps don't have the possibility to go to a specialist or get something tailored to them. And an app would be such a help for the parents to just download it in the phone and give it to the kid. If it is in their own language, is much better. Even though there is a lot of kids in South America that speak English, there is a lot of kids in, middle class or lower income that don't have those possibilities. So that would be such a blessing for them to be able to have access to your.
I would love to get to that place. I would love to. We launch on the 17th of March this
Mm-hmm.
year. And we have so many plans for this year as well. So really exciting. We're going into schools in September. We are going to be at festivals. We're going to be at 2 festivals this year with a beautiful Crushaway branded tent. Children will come in and experience the sounds on bean bags and headphones. We've so much planned for this year. It is so exciting. So yeah, languages are definitely on the list.
What would you tell a mom that doesn't really know if her kid is divergent, and then they have a lot of questions, but they don't have the resources? What would be the first step for them?
I would say, first of all, don't feel that you're alone. There's lots of support out there.
Mm-hmm.
Our local councils are really supportive, but ultimately, I'd say go and speak to your GP and just get on that list for an assessment, because it can take forever in the UK. And while you're doing that, reach out to, there's lots of parents who are going through the same thing. Reach out to us, as we've got a whole bank of, advice and support and tools and techniques. There is a lot of support out there. So, any parent wants to get in touch, I'm happy to help them and point them in the right direction.
I
But I
love
think
that.
what's beautiful is that there is more and more awareness. So there are so many people working like me in this space that are just
Mm-hmm.
want to drive awareness and drive support. So it's
Right.
phenomenal.
And there are so many groups also in Facebook as well,
Yes.
even different books online that you can go and register and ask other parents what has worked for you, what didn't work for you, and what
Yeah.
resources do you have. So I think that's so beautiful. I am so
Yeah.
happy you're here. I always say that at the end of the show, I have a newsletter every week with the show. I'm going to push your show closer to the day that you're going to be launching so we can have more visibility to your app and to what you're doing. But also, I want to explain a little more. And I will have that in the newsletter. I would have any book or anything that you recommend for parents that are in the fence, that they don't know if their kid needs to be tested or no. There is a very fine line, and there is not a lot of education out there. So I thank you so much, Nikki, for being here, for sharing your knowledge, for exposing us to this beautiful tool. And my niece is autistic, and she's learning as she goes. For when Macarena was little, that was the first diagnosis, was she doesn't behave and her mother can control her. And it wasn't until my sister stopped and said, you know what? I am not going to hear to the outside noise. I'm going to pay attention to my kid. I'm going to go and ask questions. I'm going to get her tested. And then we're going to decide what's the best thing we can do for her. So if I have any advice for parents, is do that. Get curious. Don't listen to the outside noise, and just pay attention to your kid and ask for answers, because they are out there.
Ask for questions. Claudia, if I can send you some stuff, I'd love to do that. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. So hang in. But to everyone that has questions, I have Nikki's information in the description of the show. If you want more, subscribe to my newsletter so you can get a lot more insight of what she's doing, where she's doing, and how she's doing it. Thank you so much, Nikki. It was a pleasure
Thank
having you here.
you. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Thank you all for listening to the Don't Shrink to Fit podcast. If you like this episode, please write a juicy comment below and subscribe to my podcast. Remember, we can only fly if we embrace each other. Until next week, be happy, be safe, and be kind to yourself.